what unique issues do teachers of color face dealing with marginalized communities?
Teachers of color are not primarily there to teach. They're there to alter paradigms. Losing, because we're still going to go with winning and losing if there is a such thing. Losing paradigms, misled, misinformed, toxic paradigms that are just super common in the hood, right? You know, and it's usually paradigms that the students have about themselves. You're not limited to that. That's your biggest challenge, like getting them to see themselves differently. And so how you structure stuff is so that you create all these opportunities for small wins. And then when you see the small wins with the students being like, did you see that happen? That can happen in anywhere you want it to happen. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think in other communities, kids know they got it. Oh, my parent got this. I can make mistakes all year and still win. The kids in the hood think mistakes are fatal. I got to get them to believe that mistakes are good. Make that mistake. That's how you get there.
Right.
You know, so it's the paradigms that you're working up with, the ways of viewing the world. Like half the time I'm going in like quoting 7 habits of highly effective people so we could just shift how they view the world so that they're better.
People have to change their definition of success. You know, success is you do what you love for a living, and you have valleys and peaks. You have up days and you have, you know, down days. You have days when you're making money and days when you're not. But as long as you're doing what you love for a living, that's success. And people think that success is having all the toys. And that's not, because people have all the toys but be miserable. People have all the toys but be getting caught being pedos. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see what happens with these billionaires out here. Like, they be out here miserable.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Jay-Z got all the toys and he still want to work for the NFL because that drive to have everything is still making him go out there and get it. Most Def, I was with him the other day. He was making a joke. He said, if I was Jay-Z, I'd be learning Kung Fu or, you know, learning ancient languages. He's like, why is he out here still working? You know what I'm saying?
You got it. If we're calling it material things, you know what I'm saying, or a certain degree of wealth. But no,
so I like the fact that you say, I'm as successful as a teacher, because you're not looking at success the same way that everybody who's running this rat race is.
Period.
And the second one, which I've come to more recently, in this Trump era has helped crystallize this for me. The idea of winning may be, and this is a controversial idea I'm about to say, it may be a white supremacist construct. You know what I'm saying? With all due respect to DJ Khaled and T-Pain.
Right.
Because sometimes all you do is win, and sometimes that's what you have to do.
Right.
With all due respect to them, the idea that we have to win, and that's what the purpose of life is, that may not be what it is. Because when you win, people are losing. Yeah. And we all in it together.
You stepping on people.
And it's misleading.
Yeah.
It's misleading. That's why you have people who get there and look around and it's like, this is it. You know what I'm saying? Like, wherever there is.
They give you a token, or they give you a medal, a piece of shiny thing. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that y'all was really operating almost like a mom and pop. Like out the crib, just getting the music out to the people on a real community-based level.
Absolutely. We was a mom and pop on so many levels. First, at mom and pop's house, word up. It was mom and pop.
Literally, like, that's that real mom and pop.
Period. Mom and pop's house in the garage. Like, my parents are both supportive enough and crazy enough to let us build a studio, like convert their garage into a studio. And that's when things just started going ham. Like, all of us start banging out records every week. And so that was a mom and pop shop that got us the situation where we were signed to a publishing deal and started writing for other artists. You know, somebody told this guy named Jason Ricks, about us, and like, hey, my homies built the studio in the garage and they doing crazy records. He pulls up, we show him the pictures of us actually building the studio, like drywall and you know, having an electrician come through. And more so than the music, that's what had him like, oh, these are a different set of kids.
Yeah.
And so he immediately took us to those meetings and got us that deal. I had a storefront on Manchester and Market Street called Woodworks Records. And we literally were selling our merchandise, selling our music, you know, in solid form CDs and
right, something tangible to people hold on to.
Exactly. And people are now posting a lot of those T-shirts, hoodies that we were selling to them. Like, hey, I remember, you know. But we would literally get 100 people inside and have 300 people outside, and had this sound system that is big enough to push a whole auditorium, but we just got it in a small room and banging out live shows.
Right.
And it was just something epic happening. The energy that we built at, you know, during that phase of our, you know, plight was incredible. And that carries into what we're doing today. So.
Right.
That's really dope. It sounds a lot like Nipsey Hussle.
Very much so. And Nipsey had the shop at the same time. We were, you know, what's crazy is I had the shop on Manchester and Market. And I was still teaching at Viewpoint High School, which is across the street. It's on Slauson and Crenshaw, across the street from Nipsey's shop.
Right out.
And even like we did a show on campus one time, and I walked over to Nipsey's shop. And, you know, the homies who, you know, because I'm from Inglewood teaching on Crenshaw and Slauson, the homies who were with me, who were supporting our movement, I was like, I'm going to just walk by myself because I'm going to go in there and do business. Ain't nobody going to sweat me if I'm spending money.
Right.
They still was like, I'm not letting you go by yourself, you know? So we would go over there like 5 deep. Then it becomes more of an ordeal because they in there like, we ain't seen none of y'all before.
Right.
You know, because Nipsey, man of the community, he hires his boys. So, but, you know, long story short, we do good business. They, you know, they see we about our stuff, and they, you know, we dapped it up and was like, hey man, y'all have a blessed one, y'all too.
Right.
You know, so, but it was very much similar to that operation, and I learned from that and was challenged by that even back in the day. Like, okay, I'm not the only one who sees it this way.
Right. You work on your new album. You got your family all on the album.
I do.
Your mother, is a minister of music. She sang with Anita Baker and Tina Turner and
Michael Jackson.
You tell a story on the show of her. She had an opportunity to sing for Stevie Wonder, but she turned it down because she had to stay home and raise the babies.
It's true.
But she taught you how to play piano at 6 years old. How important was that to your development, not just as an artist, but as a human being?
Oh man, it's I still can't kind of quantify all of what that meant. Like, one, it's a pastime. You know, so many kids forget the value of having something to do day in, day out. You know, you're not gonna get good without. Some people tell me like, you should practice 6 hours a day. I'm like, 6? I don't have 6 hours. I give you this 3 that I got. You know what I'm saying? But you know, and that's why like community centers are so big, like pastime. So just to keep the young mind occupied in a productive way, that's huge. But also to, like, a lot of people start with piano and give it up, and that's because they don't have that person who does it close to them. You know what I'm saying? Or the way it's taught is so much like a structured way and not like, here, let me show you something. Let me just share this with you. You know, so, and I think that's the same thing with language. Like, we learn English long before we go to an English class.
That's right.
You know? Nobody's saying this is a verb, this is a noun.
It's a practical thing.
Practical thing, right? You know,
authentic. Authenticity is a word that I think keeps coming up when people describe you and talk about you. The judges on the show on Rhythm and Flow were very wary of gimmicks, Rubik's Cubes and all that. You know what I'm saying? You being authentic was, I think, the closest thing you had to a gimmick. We can speak on that a little bit.
That's interesting you put it that way. Because on a platform like that, authenticity is the standout factor. So I get what you're saying. I think for me, it wasn't even so much like me having to say, all right, go out there and be authentic. You know, no authentic person says that. They just let their guards down and let people accept what comes naturally. But on a platform like that, I think it's a little bit more of a challenge because you have to intentionally do it every time you step up to the plate because you're giving instructions, you know what I'm saying? Because you see so many artists in one space. I think that was the most stressful part for me. Like, to show up and it's 32 artists all going over their raps and like people pacing back and forth, and it's this energy that's like, I gotta get it now.
And niggas is hungry too.
Hungry, you know, and it's not so much the hunger, because hunger I respect and I can feed off of that, but it's just the eagerness, you know, to get it now, you know, because I got years in my endeavors, you know what I'm saying? Whereas some people are a couple years in and they think like I gotta get it because it's an age race. Whereas I'm like, you know, our runway is long. You know, I got experience. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's what makes it harder to be authentic. When you got all this energy, you got to just focus and hone in and be like, what's uniquely me? You know, when you're in your own space, it comes natural. But when everything else is around, it's like, all right, I got to focus on just bringing me to the table.
Right. Right. Now, part of your story, you speak about your father being locked up until you were about 9. And I've also heard you speak on how your life was different, very different before, very different after.
Very much so.
Could you talk to us about that?
Oh, man. So my life was both different before Pops came home and after, and it was different. And this is no exception to after he came home. It was different in the house and outside the house, right? So even before he came home, in the house is love, it's music, it's food, family, you know what I'm saying? Outside the house, we had, even from my mom, who was a minister of music, we had specific instructions. Like, they knew, you know, we weren't rich by any means. We're in this apartment building, you know, low income neighborhood. They're like, one, you don't let nobody mess with your brother, and you don't let nobody put their hands on you. Nobody, right? So it's like we got all the love in the world, but it's like, now these are your instructions, these are your marching orders,
right?
So before Pops came home, it was like fighting regularly, you know, to the point where we enjoyed it. We brothers, you know, so we do it in the house as play. Outside the house, you know, it's fun. You know, my uncle, who's my Uncle Rich, he's 6 years older than me. So he's 12. His pops passed, you know, by the time I turned 6. So he's winging it, trying to be the big brother role model figure. But he literally put me up against everybody in the neighborhood. Like, y'all gonna just get this out the way, run all your fair ones, and then ain't nobody gonna mess with y'all. You know, and so that was the kind of like bipolar nature of growing up where we was at. And then coming in the house, it was literally like, all right, practice the piano. You know? Pray before you go to bed. You know what I'm saying? Like, do your homework, you know? And so, you know, we shower up and, you know, go through whatever our evening's duties were. But then when Pops came home, it was more so like, okay, y'all like fighting, y'all like karate, y'all like this. We're going to put you in a class for that. You know what I'm saying? You still gonna get that energy out. I'm still gonna let y'all be boys, but we're gonna put this structure around it. There's a pride in work in the Latin community that causes people to be comfortable with jobs that we'll turn our nose on, right? So, but in America, we tend to be like, okay, they do these kind of jobs and relegate the Latin community to that. Whereas studying abroad, when you start to be like, oh, there are doctors, lawyers, professors who do not speak English, who are some of the most respected intellectual people you would meet, that you're like, okay, this is a world, like Spanish is not a world that requires English. And it's not a working world either. It's a world in and of itself. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's what challenged me to like, okay, hold on. I need to really dive into this because it's not just what, you know, America's the only country where people don't speak multiple languages.
That's right. But you also have this hustler spirit, this work ethic that's normally stereotypically associated with like a drug dealer turned rapper. How do you make the pro-blackness work in a business that frowns upon it? Because I have my ideas of how I do it for me, but my way of obviously don't work for everybody. Yeah, I've been in this business for a long time. I've never compromised on my pro-blackness.
And it worked for you.
I figured out a way, but I know that my way don't work for everybody.
Period. And I mean, but I think that just makes you a visionary. It's your way. And you know, and I think that's what people are recognizing and respecting about me. Like, it's my way. Whatever that, like what I observed, I had the privilege of like moving with winners, so to speak, right? And just observing the process. I don't think success is a result of like any one lucky opportunity. It's a result of building in a strategic way, right? So for me, I structured myself to succeed in those ways, and just when you have a very specific way you want to succeed, like when you're like, I'm not gonna compromise my pro-blackness, then it may extend the runway, which is another piece of advice when I tell people, you know, when they're like, oh, what's your secret? What do you do? Extend the runway for yourself. Be like, give yourself a whole lot more time than you're gonna need.
Yeah.
And act as if you can get it in a year, and then just keep going.
It's good advice.